Ignorant overconfidence. You've definitely met this person. They argue like they're defending a PhD dissertation, but the moment you listen closely, the entire argument collapses like a wet cardboard box. This isn't charisma. It's not confidence. Psychology has a less flattering name for it: the Dunning-Kruger effect. When people know too little to realize how little they know, and so they overestimate themselves by a mile. It's the mental equivalent of singing karaoke horribly off-key while confidently pointing at the crowd for backup vocals. The problem isn't just ignorance, it's ignorance wearing a cape. Smart people question themselves. They say things like, "I might be wrong," but because they understand how large the unknown actually is. But lower intelligence? It treats certainty like a personality trait. Loud equals correct. Complex topic? Simplify it until it's unrecognizable. Data? Ignore it. Nuance? Couldn't be bothered. Overconfidence also acts like Teflon. Nothing sticks. Evidence bounces right off. Bad predictions get memory hold. Errors get reframed as miscommunications. And when cornered, the truly overconfident shift from argument to attitude, because tone is easier than thought. Psychologists point out that this isn't just annoying, it's a genuine cognitive blind spot. When your mental model of the world is too shallow, you literally can't see your own mistakes, which means you also can't fix them. The less someone knows, the more bulletproof they feel. Poor listening. Some people treat conversations like competitive sports. They're not listening, they're waiting to talk. You can practically see them buffering while you speak. They interrupt mid-sentence, nod at the wrong times, and ask questions you answered literally 10 seconds ago. It's not malicious. It's not even rudeness. It's a cognitive red flag. Psychologists call listening an active mental task, not a passive one. Your brain has to hold context in working memory, track tone, decode meaning, and anticipate the shape of an idea before it fully forms. That takes executive function, the same mental machinery tied to reasoning and problem solving. When that machinery is weak, listening collapses into a series of half-loaded thoughts and premature replies. And here's the twist. Poor listeners think they're great communicators. They believe their fast responses make them engaged. In reality, they're missing half the data. Conversations become like trying to watch a movie where someone keeps skipping scenes but insists they understand the plot. The fallout isn't just social. When the input is broken, the thinking is broken. Misheard details get treated as facts. Bad assumptions compound. Decisions rest on fragments of information that were never fully absorbed. It's how small misunderstandings turn into big mistakes. Black and white thinking. Have you ever talked to someone who thinks every issue on Earth has exactly two answers? Totally right, or absolutely stupid. No middle ground, no nuance, well, it depends. Just a mental light switch that only toggles between on and off. Psychologists call this cognitive rigidity, and it's one of the clearest behavioral fingerprints of lower intelligence. Rigid thinkers hate ambiguity, because ambiguity requires processing. You have to compare perspectives, hold conflicting ideas in your mind, and update your beliefs when new information appears. That's mentally expensive. So instead, people with low cognitive flexibility flatten the world into cartoon-level simplicity. If something challenges their worldview, they don't think, they reject. It's not conviction, it's avoidance. The brain refuses to run the "what if I'm wrong" program because that requires introspection. And introspection is the gym membership of the mind. Everyone claims to have it, few actually use it. Studies on problem solving show that intelligent thinkers shift strategies when the old approach fails. Rigid thinkers? They keep doing the same broken thing, convinced persistence will magically turn into progress. Spoiler, it doesn't. Drama seeking. Some people don't just experience life, they stage it. A calm group chat? They'll find a way to ignite a feud over the wording of a meme. A minor inconvenience? Suddenly, it's a 3-act tragedy with emotional monologues. These aren't villains. They're just addicted to conflict as stimulation. Psychologists point to low emotional regulation, basically your brain's ability to tolerate boredom, frustration, or discomfort without exploding into chaos. When that regulation is weak, drama becomes a self-soothing tool. Fireworks feel exciting. Quiet feels threatening. And so the person manufactures the emotional equivalent of background noise, except louder. But here's the catch. Drama doesn't just sabotage relationships, It hijacks cognition. Conflict chews up mental bandwidth meant for planning, problem solving, and reflection. When someone is constantly knee-deep in emotional debris, they don't have the processing power left for anything that requires genuine thought. It's like having 47 tabs open in your brain, and all of them are Twitter arguments. Over time, people learn not to trust a drama seeker, not because they're intense, but because every conversation risks becoming a plot twist. Drama becomes not just a habit, but an identity, one built from impulsivity, poor emotional control, and a craving for stimulation over sense, immediate gratification. If you've ever watched someone nuke their future for the thrill of a 30-second dopamine spark, congratulations. You've witnessed the psychology of immediate gratification in the wild. It's the mental habit behind impulse buys, half-finished projects, I'll start tomorrow diets, and eating the marshmallow now even though 2 are coming later. Yes, we are legally obligated to bring up the marshmallow experiment. Decades of research show that the ability to delay gratification is closely tied to higher cognitive control, the brain's internal brakes. When those brakes are weak, short-term pleasure hijacks the system. You know you should save money. You should finish that task. You shouldn't buy a new phone when your bank account is wheezing for mercy. But the present moment is shiny, and the future feels like someone else's problem. Here's the twist. Adults don't outgrow this. They just disguise it with bigger consequences. Overspending, same impulse. Doom snacking at midnight, same impulse. Dropping hobbies the second they get hard, same impulse. It's not a willpower issue. It's a cognitive one. Low foresight means you can't mentally simulate the long-term outcome, so every choice becomes a coin flip between fun now and oops later. Magical thinking. You know magical thinking. That charming mental shortcut where people genuinely believe the universe is keeping score based on what color shirt they're wearing. Lucky socks. Manifesting without action. Avoiding ladders because bad vibes. It looks harmless, even cute, until you realize it's basically cause and effect on vacation. Psychologists trace this habit to the brain's love of pattern seeking. When something good happens once, you wore the socks, you passed the test, the mind connects dots that don't exist. It's the same mechanism behind superstitions, conspiracy theories, and your uncle who thinks his football team only loses when he sits on the left side of the couch. The problem isn't hope. Hope is great. The issue is using superstition as a substitute for reasoning. Instead of asking, what's the evidence? Magical thinking jumps straight to, the universe sent me a sign, as if the cosmos has nothing better to do than micromanage your shoe choices. Lower cognitive ability shows up here because critical thinking requires evaluating reality, not vibes. Smarter minds pause, look for real causality, and consider alternate explanations. Magical thinking skips that entire process and goes straight to emotional comfort. It's thinking, but with training wheels, and the wheels are made of glitter. Avoiding time alone. Some people treat alone time like it's a haunted house, something to be avoided unless absolutely necessary. And even then, only with the lights on. If the TV's not blaring, music isn't playing, or a friend isn't available, their brain immediately starts looking for the nearest distraction. Quiet isn't peaceful to them. Quiet is threatening. But psychologists point out something interesting. Smart minds often prefer solitude because solitude is where thinking actually happens. It's where ideas simmer, reflections take shape, and your internal narrator finally gets a chance to speak without competing with 12 different forms of background noise. People who can't be alone often aren't avoiding silence. They're avoiding their own thoughts. And that avoidance tends to correlate with lower cognitive engagement. Sitting with yourself requires introspection, and introspection is a skill. It's mental weightlifting. If your brain isn't used to lifting that weight, being alone feels uncomfortable, even empty. Ironically, the people who brag about being too busy for downtime are often the ones doing the least real thinking. Talks over action. We all know someone whose ideas could win awards, if they ever did anything besides talk about them. They've got plans, grand visions, a startup concept, a workout routine, a novel, a budget, a morning routine that, if it ever existed, would make them unstoppable. And yet, somehow, not a single one of these things takes physical form outside a late-night rant. Psychologists describe this gap as intention-behavior disconnect. Talking about your goals gives your brain a tiny dopamine bump, a fake feeling of progress that tricks you into believing you've already done something. It's like buying running shoes and deciding that counts as cardio. People with lower cognitive follow-through often confuse articulation with execution. They genuinely believe that saying something out loud moves it forward, so the more they talk, the more accomplished they feel. Meanwhile, the actual work remains untouched, like a museum exhibit dedicated to procrastination. Smarter minds tend to recognize that ideas are cheap and labor is the currency of reality. They understand planning is the appetizer, not the meal. But low-action thinkers cling to talking because talking is safe. Talking never exposes your limits. Talking never risks failure. Low situational awareness. Some people navigate the world with the spatial awareness of a Roomba that's low on battery. They'll stop in the middle of a doorway to check their phone. They'll hold full-volume conversations in public. They'll drive in the fast lane going 10 under, creating a traffic snake behind them. Psychologists tie this to low situational awareness, a core part of social cognition. Smart minds constantly update their understanding of the environment, noticing cues, predicting outcomes, adjusting behavior. Lower intelligence struggles with that mental flexibility. The person isn't trying to be rude. They're simply not processing the fact that their actions affect anyone. Situational awareness also requires perspective shifting, which is basically your brain's ability to imagine how your behavior lands on others. When that cognitive tool is missing, small decisions like blocking a walkway, ignoring social cues, being loudly oblivious. The funniest part? People with poor situational awareness often believe they are the reasonable ones. They're baffled when others seem irritated because it never occurred to them that life is not a solo mission. It's group work, and they're the kid in the group project who thinks showing up counts as contributing. Falling for conspiracies. There's a special kind of confidence that only appears after someone reads a headline, watches half a TikTok, and suddenly believes they've uncovered the truth the government doesn't want you to know. Flat Earth, microchips in vaccines. Psychologists note that low intelligence often shows up as shallow information intake. Instead of reading, verifying, or comparing sources, people latch onto the most exciting explanation because excitement feels like insight. The brain takes the shortcut. This feels dramatic, therefore it must be true. Conspiracy thinking also thrives on a cognitive glitch called pattern over-detection. When the mind struggles with nuance and probabilistic thinking, it connects dots that shouldn't be connected, because randomness feels uncomfortable. A complex world gets replaced with simple villains and secret plots. It's comforting, in the same way a coloring book is comforting. Clean lines, no ambiguity. But the biggest red flag? Lack of critical thinking. Smarter minds pause and ask, where's the evidence? Lower minds say, I saw it online, so obviously. No curiosity. Curiosity is one of the strongest predictors of intelligence, not IQ, but real-world mental agility. It's the engine that drives learning, questioning, exploring, and updating your beliefs when new facts show up. People with low curiosity don't ask why. They don't wonder how things work. They don't explore unfamiliar ideas because unfamiliar ideas require effort, and effort is their mortal enemy. Give them a new topic and they'll dismiss it. Give them a question and they'll shrug. Give them a chance to learn and they'll say, nah, I'm good. Psychologists call this low need for cognition, basically the brain's version of, I don't feel like using energy today. Smart minds enjoy thinking. They get a little dopamine buzz from solving problems or connecting new concepts. Low curiosity minds treat thinking like a chore equivalent to folding laundry. Technically possible, but deeply undesirable. What's worse is how this habit traps people. Learning exposes gaps in your knowledge. Growth requires discomfort. Curiosity shines a light on what you don't know, and for people who already feel insecure about their abilities, that's terrifying. So they retreat into the safest worldview possible, the one they already have, ego fragility. Some people treat every disagreement like it's a courtroom drama where their self-worth is on trial. If something goes right, they take credit instantly. If something goes wrong, suddenly it's everyone else's fault. The weather, the algorithm, the coworker, the dog, anyone except the person holding the steering wheel. Psychologists call this externalization, and it's a classic sign of a fragile ego. A fragile ego can't afford to be wrong because being wrong feels like being less. So instead of updating their beliefs, they twist reality to protect their pride. Facts get rewritten. Stories get reinterpreted. Accountability gets launched into space. Here's the deeper problem. Learning requires ego strength, the ability to say, "Oh, I messed that up. Let's fix it." People with higher intelligence can do this because they see mistakes as data. People with lower intelligence see mistakes as identity threats, so they dodge, deflect, argue, deny, and perform emotional gymnastics to avoid the unbearable sentence, "I was wrong." This habit loops endlessly. Mistake, blame others. Conflict, blame others. Consequences, blame others. Meanwhile, the actual problem, the thinking error, never gets addressed. So the person just keeps repeating the same patterns, like life is stuck on the world's most frustrating rerun. Excessive doomscrolling. There's relaxing. And then there's digitally sedating yourself until your brain forgets how to form original thoughts. Hours vanish. This isn't just a bad habit. It's a cognitive, slow leak. Psychologists warn that constant passive consumption trains your brain to crave short, shallow dopamine bursts. Every swipe, every notification, every autoplay episode hits your reward system like a tiny sugar cube. Meanwhile, deeper mental tasks, reading, problem solving, reflection, start to feel exhausting because they don't produce the same instant thrill. But here's the twist. Low intelligence doesn't come from using screens. It comes from using them instead of thinking. Smart minds balance stimulation with learning or creativity. Lower minds get stuck in consumption loops because consuming is easier than analyzing. Watching a show, zero friction. Learning something new, subjectively painful. To make it even worse, negative content grabs attention more aggressively, so the brain gets hijacked by stress, fear, outrage, all of which impair reasoning. People start mistaking emotional reactions for informed opinions. The world feels chaotic, not because it is, but because their feed is. Trend-driven thinking. You know that one friend whose entire identity gets overwritten every time the internet picks a new aesthetic? One month they're wearing Nike because TikTok said so. The next month they've rebranded as an Adidas purist. This isn't self-expression, this is herd mentality with Wi-Fi. Psychologists note that low intelligence often shows up as external identity construction, relying on trends, groups, or influencers to decide what you should like, think, or do. It's thinking outsourced. Instead of asking, "Do I like this?" their brain simply goes, "It's popular, so yes." Trend chasing becomes a way to avoid the mental effort of forming opinions. Critical thinking requires evaluating ideas, comparing values, and deciding whether something aligns with who you are. But mimicry? Zero cognitive load. Just copy, paste, repeat. The deeper issue is self-concept clarity. Intelligent thinkers build identity from curiosity and experience. Lower thinkers build identity from whatever has the highest view count that week. They don't explore, they imitate, and imitation keeps them stuck in surface-level preferences they never examine. Poor emotional control. Some people react to life like their emotional volume knob is stuck at max. A tiny disagreement, outrage, a suggestion, offense, a differing opinion, nuclear-level overreaction. These aren't passionate people. They're people whose emotional regulation is running Windows 95. Psychologists consistently link low emotional intelligence with low overall cognitive flexibility. Emotional control isn't just a personality trait. It's a thinking skill. It requires your brain to pause, evaluate, and choose a response instead of firing off the first instinct that shows up. People with higher intelligence naturally do this because they can hold two truths at once. I feel something and I don't have to act on it. Lower intelligence struggles with that separation. Feelings equals facts. Discomfort equals threat. Disagreement equals disrespect. Their inner world is so tightly fused with their reactions that everything becomes personal, immediate, and explosive. And the irony? The emotional overreactors often believe they're the only ones being real. In reality, they're showing how few cognitive tools they have. A single spike of irritation derails their reasoning. Anger substitutes for argument. Impulse replaces logic. This is why they can't handle criticism, or opposing views, or sometimes even tone. Regulating emotions requires the same executive functions tied to problem solving and self-reflection. So when those skills are weak, emotional chaos fills the gap. If this one hurt your feelings just a little, perfect. The next video digs even deeper. Meet me there.